sharing your stories and playing your songs on Graham's JFDI Show.
Well, very warm welcome to the JFDI Show on the 3rd of August 2023. First time that we've done this in the normal format for a while. I've got a guest to introduce you to tonight who's going to come on and talk about songs and other things, I'm fairly sure, as well. Do you want to know who it is? Well, I'll tell you who it is. I first met this gentleman in, must have been 1990. So we know it's a long, long time ago. I'm going to tell him a couple of things he might not know when he joins me. And I don't think it'll surprise him in the slightest. So he was one of my watch bosses. I think that's probably the best way to put it. He won't like that, but he was. He was supposed to be in charge, and looking back now, I kind of feel sorry for what he had to put up with, but I think he'd seen it all before, and I think he'd been in exactly the same position as we had. So roll the clock forward 30 some years, and through the wonders of technology and social media and all that jazz, reconnected, and I think have had many a conversation over the last few years when we started doing these JFDI and the virtual Zooms. I'm really looking forward to finding out some of the stuff that's gone on in our guest's life since many of you will have since you last saw him. It's my great pleasure to bring on to the JFDI podcast Mr. Paul Clayfield. Good evening. Or
Hi,
is it evening? Evening. Is it evening where you are?
Evening. Technical difficulties. Sorry, what did you say, Pinky?
I just said good evening, or is it evening where you are?
All right, no, it's afternoon here. We're 4 hours behind you, so it's still nice and sunny, and that's why I put the screen up behind me, because otherwise the sun comes through the windows, and I'm difficult enough as it is without any additions to my ugliness. So, I noticed that you never did shave.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you said you were going to shave, and you didn't.
Well,
so just saying that nothing's changed in 40 years.
What said he's going to shave and never did. I actually did get my electric razor out, and I did a little bit around the sides, but I quite like it. I've never been the greatest at being able to grow it. So if it's working at 52, then why give up the habit of a lifetime, right?
Hey, listen, a quick technical issue. I'm gonna see if I can get you on my iPhone as well as on the computer. I was in the computer, so
okay.
But it might bugger things up if I do this. So,
no problem at all.
Okay.
No problem. For those watching or those listening.
Yeah, I think we're getting labeled.
Paul joins us from quite a distance. Well, I mean, you're on the planet, right?
Yeah, that's not going to work. I tried that. That's that will avoid.
Not going to work.
Just about sometimes.
So, whereabouts? Remind.
It's not working on my iPhone. It's just giving me. In Canada, whereabouts? I'm in Nova Scotia, so.
Nova Scotia.
Funny enough, I'm toying with the idea of learning Gaelic because there's a lot of Gaelic speakers here. In fact, there's more Gaelic speakers here and probably Scotland by percentage-wise. There's over 20,000 Gaelic speakers here.
Wow, that's quite some.
Yeah. So, well, funny enough, the band. Do you know the band Runrig?
I do.
Well, their singer, their vocalist, is from Cape Breton, which is part of Nova Scotia.
Ah, I did not know that.
They searched high and low all over for a Gaelic speaking singer, and they couldn't find one good enough. So they found one in Cape Breton. In Cape Breton, which is a motorcycle tour around there. They nearly all speak Gaelic there.
Yeah.
The whole population is strange. And then apart from a little place called Shelley Camp, and they speak, well, it's a sort of a pidgin French. It's a strange French accent they've got, and they speak French. So we've got French, Gaelic, and English here. And all our road signs, all our place signs are in Gaelic as well as in English.
Ah, okay. Yeah, they've got some.
Every weekend we have. You're cutting out, mate.
Sorry, on you go. You were saying
Wi-Fi. I don't think it is. My Wi-Fi is pretty good.
It might be.
I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of. Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off the computer.
Rejoin.
And just go on the iPhone and see if that works.
Yeah, let's see if we can do that. Okay.
Better. Yeah. A bit longer, perhaps. Now.
Okay. Let's see. If anybody's watching at the moment, could you pop something in the chat? Just say hello if you can see me. All right. And then we'll know if Paul's able to rejoin and all's hunky dory. Then maybe I'll need to make some rearrangements. Who's with us this evening? Who's with us this evening? Karen, hello. Vicky, hi. Oh, you both posted at exactly the same time at 8:08. 8:08 state. In your face. Yeah, sorry, Karen. And sorry, Vicky. And Jugsy and Mo as well. Oh, listen, can I say, whilst we're waiting on Paul, Vicky, can I tell people watching, can I tell them your news? Am I allowed to? Am I allowed to? Can I tell them? Can I? Well, I won't. I'll just say congratulations to you. Yes, I can. Brilliant. Okay. I will bring, I'm going to bring Paul in. Here we go. You're back with us, mate. How's that?
Yeah, there was an unmitigated disaster, so I'm back on the computer again. So we'll see if we can.
Well, I was just checking in on our listeners, viewers, whilst you were reconnecting, Paul.
Sorry, say again.
I've got you. I think we just need to work with this delay. I think that's it. We're just saying, Paul, a few people watching, I was trying to see how the stream was. I think it's okay. We have Karen is tuned in, Vicky's on, says hello, Jugsy, and Mo. And I was just going to say, I asked Vicky if she'd give me permission to share her news. So I wanted to say a massive congratulations to her. So Vicky has just been appointed the team coach for the men's RAF netball team. which is awesome. I've never seen
Well
a men's
done.
networking, but if do you know what? I don't. So if I've never seen it, I don't know how good the RAF team is, but I think that they're just about to get an awful lot better.
Well, I suppose. Well, it's funny you should say that. I was recently asked to coach these rugby team here, and I declined because I thought it was a bit creepy, to be honest with you. So I would much prefer to have been able to coach the men's one, but never mind. But well done, Vicky, anyway, and I'm sure you'll have great fun doing that.
Yes, indeed. Right, I've got you a little bit clearer, Paul. So you see, when I was preparing for this evening, I thought, right, what are the bits that the areas that I don't know, and I thought, I've probably learned more through the chats that we had in lockdown and kind of post then than I ever did before. So I chose some questions and some that made me laugh. But we can't forget that you hit us up with 4 or 5 tunes, and I have to say, I've got 5 songs here that, I mean, again, it just shows there's a lot of guests come on and I would go, yeah, I would have taken you for that. But actually, you've really surprised me. So, and I had a big smile when I read the first one that you said, which is the Who, and I'm Free.
Yeah, that was important to me because that was the beginning of my time in the RAF. And when we came off the parade ground out for passing out at Swinderby, we all burst into songs singing "I'm Free," and that was the start of my RAF career. And that was 1973, and "I'm Free" came out just a little bit before that, and it was the days of Roger Daltrey and Pinball Wizard, and he made a fantastic film called McVicker. I don't know if you ever saw it, which was brilliant. So Roger Daltrey's a really good actor as well as being a great musician and vocalist in that. But that's always resonated with me because we did the time at Swinderby. It was hard square bashing. This was the days when you had bumpers instead of hoovers, and I'll swing the tilly lamp and pull up a sandbag. But it was hard graft, and it was just a relief to come off there and all go off our separate ways and go and do our trade training and that. And so that was the beginning of my career, really. So that was a milestone in my life.
Yeah. Did you say 1973?
Yeah. So I joined up on the 6th of July, 1973. So I've just had my 50th anniversary of joining the Air Force.
That is amazing. That I said, so yes, that was just for 50 years. 50 years. Stop a moment, and I mean, honestly,
yes,
that is. And you spent how long in?
Just under 22 years. But I didn't all count because I joined up when I was 17 and 3 weeks old. So they only counted from your 18th birthday, basically. So that would have been in 1974, and I came out in 1994. So actually, that would have been 20 years. So we'll call it 20 years.
I thought a moment there when you said that you had to do extra time there. Because the 2 times that I know that you do time for the Queen is a time before your 18th birthday, but you also have to do any time that you spent at Her Majesty's pleasure.
Well, the funny story about that, I never did actually do time inside, but there was a guy called Ronnie Adrain, who was called No Brain Adrain. He's an Irish fella. He was a nice guy, actually. Anyway, he did time inside. And then when he thought he'd done his time, he went home to Ireland, and that was it. And nobody ever heard of him. So they sent the military policeman to go and arrest him because he'd done 3 weeks inside or 4 weeks inside or something, and he'd forgotten to tag that on to the end. So he got done for being AWOL for the time he hadn't counted for being inside. So they charged him again. I'd like to have done 23 years, and that way I could have done a year for every charge I'd had in the Air Force. So that would be.
Did you have 23 charges in the Air Force?
Yeah.
I actually think so. Somebody asked me, or it was either on the radio or somebody asked me how many charges I had, and I couldn't remember. And I had a message from Marky Pattinson who said, I thought it was 18 that you had. So if you had 23, you had even more than me. You were a rascal.
Pat Madonna had 50. I'm a good boy compared to him.
Good grief, honestly.
Yeah.
So many, but the things, you know, and the
most
people.
Of my charges were actually at my time there.
They were mainly what, at Buchan, did you say?
I didn't get that.
No, it's okay. So talking about people that have charges and stuff. So here's one. We'll hit right in there from the start, because I know just from some of our chats that things that you've seen and experienced. So what would you say is the funniest, most unforgettable story from your time in the RAF that never fails to make you smile whenever you recall it?
Oh my gosh, there's so many of them. And I guess a lot of them wouldn't be relevant because you wouldn't know the characters involved. You have to, so for them to be humorous, you have to know the characters involved. But you've put me on the spot there, really. There's the problem is, like, for instance, at Spade Adam, there was an incident one evening in the local pub, and I happened to be arm wrestling with this chap, and his arm broke. Anyway, it made the local papers, and so it said, Brawny Airman breaks local businessman's arm. That was the headline for the local newspaper. So I didn't know anything about it, and I went into work, and my squad leader called me in, and his squad leader halfway, we called him Darth Vader, because the force was with him, right? And he threw the newspaper on the desk, and he said, what the can help this, Clayfield? I said, newspaper, sir. He said, this, Brawny Airman breaks local businessman's arm. I said, does it mention who the Brawny Airman is, sir? So he said, no. He said, but it can only be one person. I said, not unless there's a typo. He said, what do you mean a typo? I said, it should say, Brainy Airman breaks local businessman's arm. So he said, get out of my office. So I was ordered out of his office, and the other squad leader there called me into his office, and this time I didn't have to have a hat on. He said, the squad leader, Pa, he's a really nice guy. He said, Clayfield, he said, I don't know what we're going to do with you. I said, well, what do you want to do with me? He said, well, listen, I'm going to tell you. He said, I'd rather have one of you than 20 of those out there if we're at war. But we're not at war, lad. Just calm down. I said, I'm afraid you have to put up with me until we do go to war or get rid of me, and then you'll be lucky what you've got. So he said, oh, for Christ's sake, get out. And that was that. But there were lots of occasions like that. You know, another time at Neatishead, we put on so I was on the entertainment committee for the Horseship St. Faith Families Club, right? And we put on on the entertainment committee, we put on this big show, and we had it was like a cabaret and stuff like that. And we had a hypnotist. Well, hypnotists aren't allowed in our trade, right? Because of things that have happened before, in case we start blacking secrets out and God knows what else. So anyway, this hypnotist came on, and that's another story which I won't go into because I won't go to that. But anyway, so at the end of it, it was a great evening and everything. And myself and Vince Taylor, did you ever come across Vince Taylor, Flight Sergeant Taylor?
Yes, I
reckon. Call him Vince.
Yeah.
Smashing bloke. Really is a great bloke. A fantastic man manager. So anyway, so he was the chairman, and I was the head of the entertainment and also the bar manager. And we were hauled over the coals for having a hypnotist. So he went in to see the squad leader admin first, and he came out with his tail between his legs. I said, well, what happened, Vince? He said, I'll tell you after. He said, you've got to go straight in. So I went in there, got a real dressing down, bollocking, saying we shouldn't have done this, we shouldn't have done that. So I came out and I said, Jesus Christ, Vince, how come you can get the same bollocking I did just because you're a flight sergeant? He said, no, I told him, I thought you told me it was ventriloquist. So, that's how we got away with it. So things like that, and they do make me smile when I look back on them, just some of the things that people do and say and get away with and stuff. Another time, I don't know if Hammy's on, but he might remember this. Hammy was, so we were on the bridge in Buchan in the Biff, and there were like 6 officers all looking down on the table, looking at whatever they were looking at, I don't know. And they all had their hands in their pockets, and it was the group captain, the wing commander, 2 squadron leaders, and a flight lieutenant, right? They're all there looking down on the table, all with their hands in their pockets. And Hammy walks over and he looks down as well, and he's got his hands in his pockets. So I said, Hamilton? He said, yes, Corporal. I said, is it right that you're taking a commission? He said, no. I said, well, take your fucking hands out of your pockets then. And then 6 officers took their hands out of their pockets in quick succession. It was classic, if you could have filmed it, it was pretty good. So, but there were lots of things like that happened that I just sometimes sort of smile at and think, oh God, yeah. And some of the stupid things they did, like streaking around Cosford running track and the things before. That was me and a guy called Phil Facey, and we were dared to do it by the other guys. We were all drunk, like. And what we didn't know is as we were streaking around, the lads that had dared us were having it away with our clothes, and they had it away on their heels with our clothes, and so we had no clothes, and they ran off with our clothes. So we had to make it back to our accommodation stark naked. And we couldn't go through the main gate. We had to break into RAF Gosford to get to the transit accommodation, and without being caught because we were starkers and just things like that. And there were lots of things I did get caught with, and it was fair cop. And I tell you what, of all the charges I had, it didn't bother me at all, because all it was doing was saying, and this is what people should remember, especially those that I've charged. And I know there's one that perhaps I was a bit hard on, but I'm just, if you get charged or if you charge somebody, you're just saying, well, you've done something wrong, and it's beyond my power to punish you. And so I'm going to refer it to somebody up the chain who's going to take a look at the situation and decide whether you should be punished or not. That's it. It's not a big deal. I never thought it was too big, But interestingly, there was a flying officer at Buchan when I got a lot of charges, and there was a sergeant there who really didn't like me. I don't blame him really, because I was shit really. But he ordered lots of people to charge me, and so I was amassing lots of charges. So this officer went on a legal course to learn all about MAFL and manual of Air Force law and QR and all this legal stuff. Anyway, a long story. I said, well, look, here's my situation. What should I do? He said, every time you get charged in future, come and see me first, and I'll tell you what to do. So I would go and see him every time I got charged and say, I got charged for this, that, and the other thing. And he would say, I would just say this and say that and do this and do that. I'd say, okay. And then he'd go to the officer who was hearing the charge, and he'd tell him that he'd given me advice. And if I then got, punished when I shouldn't be punished after giving me legal advice, then it would be difficult for him. So I got away with a load of charges, and this sergeant that kept charging me got more and more pissed off, and that's another story. Anyway, this flying officer, many years later, sorry about being a long story, he was a group captain, and I was at Strike Command working at the Gesens Ground Environment Systems Management School. And he said, Corporal Clayfield, he said, I understand you. I said, that's right, sir. He said, I understand you had some difficulties up there with certain people. I said, yeah, nothing I couldn't handle. I'm not that bothered about it. He said, well, can you enlighten me? I said, yes, I'm not really bothered, so I'm out there now. I don't worry about it. And in particular, he'd heard I had a problem with Jock Thompson, and one or two of the officers there. So he said, well, I want you to tell me. I said, I really don't want to say so. I'm not bothered. It's history. So he said, look, I did a lot for you when you were younger. and now it's payback time. You've got to sit down and tell me. So I told him everything. I said, well, the station is run by the Warrant Officer Thompson and the Chief Clerk and the Sergeant Policeman, and they've sort of got everything sewn up. I said, the Wing Commander Adney, he's a pretty good control. He's very on shift. So I said, it's just a shit show. So he said, well, I get in there, so I get in there to that. And he was told, and he confided in me, he said, look, I've been told if I can sort out Buchan, then I can make air rank. And if I can't, I stay at the rank I'm at. I want to give it a shot. So I said, okay, good luck to you, sir. So immediately he got posted in there, he got rid of Thompson. And then he got rid of the sergeant policeman, and he got rid of so he went through them all, but based on pretty much what I told him. His name was, and everybody hated him, his name was Group Captain Mike Shields. Now, Mike, even when he was a flying officer, was a stickler for the rules. Whatever the rules said, if he said it in the book, that's where it got done, and that was it. And when he got to Buchan, he was very, very unpopular. He never did get air rank, mind you. But that was it. And that was my part in Dr. Thompson's downfall.
Well, there you go. Crikey, I remember that name as well. I remember. Yeah, I do.
I do. Nothing. I would never change anything. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Do you know what? It's you learn from the bad stuff's what I think why change?
No, I didn't. The bad stuff. Look, the bad anyway. Most of it anyway. Of it. In fact, probably more than I got. I had a lot of people protecting me as well. People I didn't even know in the background sending me on like at Spade Adam. He would promote me to sergeant. He'd give me the station commander's car and send me to a meeting at Strike Command, and I'd be in civics. And the reason why they promoted me to sergeant was because they said an SAC would look like in the meetings I was in. So I was in this meeting with all these army majors, and this colonel turned to me and he said, and he's F-111 colonel, he turned to me and so Spade on this bomb pot, right? So he said, is it true that if we shake our joystick just before we release our bomb, we get a better score? So I sort of, and everybody was looking at me for an answer. And I looked at the group captain and I said, is he serious? He said, I think so. I said, for fuck's sake, no wonder. He said, oh, I think we should have a tea break. I couldn't believe it. He genuinely thought if he waggled his joystick, he'd get a better score. What a bomb pot. No, geez. And I couldn't, so there you go, So it was an education.
Oh, dear. Can we go on? Can we move? Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I think I didn't care because I really genuinely wasn't that bothered about promotion. When I joined up, I just wanted and I liked rugby and squash, and I was on the RAF bobsleigh team for a while, so that was great. I knuckled down. I put in my redundancy, and my boss at the time said to me, he said, look, we don't want you to leave, you like your work and everything. And I just had a really good assessment from the Falkland Islands as well, because remember Dick Hemsley?
Yeah.
Flight Lieutenant Hemsley became squadron leader Hemsley from Buckland. Anyway, he was over there as a squadron leader, and a load of things happened. And I just managed to pull things out of the bag and save his backside loads of times for different things. And so I got top, nines from the Falcons. So I was walking on water. So they said, well, look, what would it take for you to withdraw your redundancy request? That's about too much. really, to be honest with you, I'm not that bothered about promotion. I shouldn't be looking for promotion to sergeant or flight sergeant. Potentially, I should be working my way towards warrant officer, but that's never going to happen now. So I've screwed myself. I'm quite happy with that. And now it's time for me to leave. They said, oh, well, the new boss of the bunker was just come off X squad. They said, we'll promote you to sergeant. We'll get you fast tracked because of your time served to the flight sergeant. And if you keep your nose clean for just 3 years, we'll get you fast tracked up to warrant officer. I said, well, that's not going to happen, is it? I'm not going to keep my nose clean. So I said, well, thanks, but no thanks. And I've seen people get off things before, and it never ever pans out. So it's nice rhetoric at the time, but I just thought, no, it's time to leave. So that's what I did. So sorry, so you were saying my next song, was it?
Yes. Well, I was going to ask you next song until you mentioned that you were part of the RAF bobsleigh team at one point.
I missed that last bit. Say again.
No, I think you mentioned you said you were in the RAF bobsleigh team.
Yeah. In fact, so when I had troubles with Jock Thompson and he took away my security clearance, I went and worked in the gym, and I was working for Neil Coyne, who was also on the RAF bobsleigh team. So I had a great time. I loved it. And he said, just come to work in a tracksuit. And when the OC admin, Wing Commander admin, said, what's going on? I said, oh, it's just, blah, blah. He said, you can't take away your security clearance. I said, well, he has to. I said, well, I'm quite happy. He said, I bet you are. He said, you're supposed to be a corporal in aerospace systems operator. I said, well, they're short of PTI, so it doesn't matter where I'm a corporal. I'm still a corporal, right? So still get the same pay. I just had to walk from my house across to the gym every morning. I got caught out on the basic fitness test. I moved the cones closer together to give the chaps an easier time. And there were a couple of young officers there who didn't understand, and they were making their chances backwards and forwards. They did like 50 of them or something stupid, which was impossible. And I couldn't get it across to them that we were just doing it for the lads that were a little bit, not really up to doing their basic fitness test. So I got out on that one. But yeah, I was just there. If anybody wanted a game of squash or 3 lessons of squash, I just had to give them 3 lessons of squash and look after the sports store. It was great. I loved it. And of course, Jock Thompson found out that I was having the time of Riley, and he just got he said to me, he said, no matter what I do to you, Clayfield, every cesspit I put you in, you come out smelling a roses. Because it broke a few pencils and get me out. So yeah, but I loved it on the bobsleigh team. It was fantastic. It was really a great crack. So we bobsleighed with Duncan Goodhue. He tried it. He was useless. The guy that was our coach for a while was the guy that was also the advisor for the film Chariots of Fire, and he was also one of the Olympic coaches. And there were all sorts of people I met through that. That was great fun. So I quite enjoyed that, and it's a thrill. To put it clearly, every guy should have at least one run in his life to find out if something's better than sex.
I would love to. How do you, as somebody with no experience, how would you get yourself on a bobsleigh?
Well, so they have a selection every year. You can go down and compete against all the other hopefuls. You have to do certain things like you wet the tip of your hands, and you have to jump as high as you can and hit a chalkboard to see how high you can jump. It shows your the muscles in your legs basically, and how much your sprinting speed can be over a short distance. They want you to have a really good sprinting speed over a short distance, which I just happen to have. And then you have to be able to lift heavy things. Well, I should have been a rock ape because I can lift heavy things. So I bench pressed. I can't remember what it was. My bench press was pretty high back then, and so that was it. I just accidentally qualified basically because of the things I'd done before. They do recruit a lot of people from the rugby world, so a lot of the players, the guys there are ex-rugby players, and they don't like you playing rugby while you're on the team in case you injure yourself, and it's expensive to replace you on the team for a start. If you drop out, then that screws up because you're either in a 2-man team or a 4-man team, and you train together, and it screws up everything if one guy comes out injured. So we prefer you not to play rugby, even though most of the guys are rugby players. So yeah, and I'm still in touch. Like Tom Delahunty, he was a PTI who was also on the team with me, and then he went on. He was coaching the Canadian team. He was out here. He coaches the Dutch team at the moment. He's a Dutch Olympic coach. He's still on my Facebook. We talk every now and again. When you have a close death experience with somebody else, you get quite close, and everyone's a close death experience.
Was there, what
I
was the,
nearly got kicked off the team once for suggesting we could have roll cages, and they all looked at me funny when I first started. They said, "You really shouldn't be here, should you?" I said, "What? I don't understand. If we had a roll cage," he said, "No, you shouldn't be here, Paul. You're in the wrong sport." I said, "I don't get it." And that was the whole point. The danger, you know.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go on. What were you saying?
No. I was just going to say we'll move on to your second song, if that's all right, because it's When a Man Loves a Woman, the by Bryan Adams. This one.
I can't hear.
Have you got me?
All right.
Just
Okay.
moved on to
So
that
was
Man Loves a Woman.
Bryan Adams. That was actually a choice of my wife, my current wife, not my past previous wife. When we got married, that was the song that she chose to get married by. So instead of having, Here Comes the Bride or anything, that was playing in the background. And one of my best mates married us. So we were in Riyadh at the time. And then we wanted to get married, so we could get married at the British Embassy. There's only like 5 embassies in the world that are allowed to marry people, and Riyadh is one of them. And we were happy to get married in Riyadh because it meant that we couldn't invite her family or my family. You just can't get people into Saudi Arabia like stuff and like stuff. So that worked out quite well. Anyway, so we arranged to get married, and in Riyadh, for those who haven't been to Saudi Arabia, I know some guys have a Thursday and a Friday, because the Muslim weekends are on different days. So we arranged to get married on the Thursday. Anyway, we were close to the wedding day, and my mate who married us was the British consul. So he was happened to be a mate of mine, and he was marrying us as well. So he called me up and he said, "Paul, it's Chris. I've got some bad news." I said, "What is it?" He said, it turns out there's a rule that we can marry people, but we can't marry them on a weekend. And as it's not really a British weekend, but it's a Saudi weekend, because it's a weekend for this country, we can't marry you on the Thursday. So I said, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" So he said, "Don't worry, I've got something in the offing." I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "I'll let you know if it works out." Well, Sir Andrew, who was the rugby fan, and I was a big rugby fan, and also I was on the special interest group. A visit from the head of Coops Bank, for instance, and they'd invite me to talk about finance and shit like that. So anyway, he got hold of it. He said, "Oh yeah, no problem." So Chris rang me back and he said, "Oh, right, we've got it sorted. I spoke to the ambassador." I said, "Excellent. Well, what's happening?" He said, "We've made Thursday a working day at the embassy so you can get married." I said, "You can't do that. Most of my mates are in the embassy. They'll kill me." He said, "No, we've given them all the day off." So officially in the diaries that day was a working day and everybody had the day off. And so it's just a funny story about
You meant
I said I can't buy my only
I was going to ask. You talked about when you decided to leave, but I've got a question for you about transitional. I'm always curious to to hear the kind of transition from military to civilian life, because for some people it can be really significant, and for for some people it can be smoother than others. But is there a moment that you can think of, or a time that you can think of, that made you appreciate the differences and the unique aspects of each environment, sort of, military
Yeah,
to civilian?
sure. So when I came out of the RAF, originally I took on a pub, and that did quite well, but my ex-wife at the time had some medical issues that meant we couldn't continue. As it happens, that they weren't issues that we thought they were. So but anyway, so when I stopped, it was at the time Maggie Thatcher brought out this thing that you didn't have to be a lawyer to do conveyance. And while I was waiting for it, in order to claim, I had to go for interviews. And so, cut a long story short, I went for an interview with the crew, and they paid me this money to go for an interview. I went for a whole load of interviews because they kept giving me money to turn up for interviews. But what it turned out was the crew had a big changeover at the time. They had 12,000 consultants, but these used to be guys with bicycle kits that go around and catch your monthly premium or whatever, and have a cup of tea with you. But they all had to take qualifications, and they didn't think most of them would get through them because they were tough qualifications. So they wanted ex-military people. And when I found out that what inquired why, because in the military you're always learning. Remember tax? So you're always learning, and you're always doing exams, and if you get good at something, they post you, because you can't be good at something. So you're always learning. You're learning different trades, different skills, and you might be working on one piece of kit, and you're working on another piece of kit, or doing something different. So you're always learning, no matter what you do that. But by and large, most civilians, if they're a forklift truck driver, they're a forklift truck driver. That's it. Or they're work in a pub, but they don't learn all the way through and have to be challenged mentally all the time. So that's the difference between military and civilian. And so they specifically wanted ex-military people because we still have the ability to learn, even though we were older. And that's one of the big differences. Other big differences are to motivate a civilian is far more difficult than to motivate a military person. And it's simple. Some people, well, let's put it this way. I was always given credit for being a good man manager in the RAF. But that was because if you didn't do what I told you to, I could arrest you. I can't do that in Civvy Street. So when I might have been a good man manager in the airport, I was trying to take people around the back and say, how does it ever get done? So, yeah, there are huge differences, I think. But I like the industry I ended up in because there's no racism or favoritism or anything. You're only as good as your last case. And the only thing that counts, the only colour that counts is green, and that's the dollar. Nobody cares whether you're black, white, male, female, gay, transiting, whatever you are. You can identify as a cat if you want to, as long as you dig in the money, and that's it. So there's no discrimination whatsoever, and it's really nice. And you don't get any bullshit either, because you can talk as much as you like, but it's only the dollar that counts, and that's it. So it's a pretty straight world, apart from the fact there's so many crooks. And that is true. And that's because the rewards for being crooked is so high, as we've just found out with, we weren't going to talk about that, but the currency cut. It was great being a witness and actually be able to do something to try and get some justice. And I don't know if you've been monitoring this site, and I won't go on about it because not everyone's involved in it before them, but things are happening there anyway. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, I've seen a few things sort of like moving. But I think you always said it'll be slow. It'll be a slow process.
Oh yeah. This is the end of the road. This is just the beginning. It'll go on for another 3 or 4 years yet, but they will end up in jail. I'm sure of that. They'll end up for some time in jail.
Yeah. Right.
So anyway,
on to number 3. The needle in. Oh, the needle in and the damage done. Neil Young. A real foot stomper. This one, eh?
Every junkie's like a setting sun more, and I've gone and knocked it on the solid door. And it's just my mates. I was living in Scotland in St Andrews around there. My father was stationed at Lucas. And I went to school in Scotland and everything. In fact, I went to Belbaxter, which is the same as Davy. David Marshall, he went to Belbaxter as well, so we went to the same school. But a lot of guys around there, they didn't. A lot of them got involved in drugs, and I saw a lot of really, really good people wasted. I mean, their whole life wasted because they just happened to make the wrong decision at the wrong time. And they were really good people, but they just made, and it was something I always avoided because I was interested in sport. Like, I didn't want to screw myself up. And to this day, I've never, even though I'm not really preaching for converting here, even though marijuana or anything, I mean, I know it's not. It might be your choice, but it's just not mine. Right? But then again, I like a drop of whiskey every now and again. So there you go, and a rum every night. So it's one after the other, I guess. But anyway, I saw people with heroin and stuff, and cocaine wasn't very prevalent back in those days. It was mostly heroin. And some of the things that one girl in Cooper, one last thing, she just needed to fix her quickly. She tried to put a needle through her eye to get it to her brain as quickly as she could. Things that it was just awful. And around about that time, that song came out, "The Needle in the Damage Done." And I've always been a fan of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and Neil Young in particular. And a lot of the songs he does, I can relate to, especially now because I'm in Canada and he's Canadian. Right? But Graham Nash is British, Stevie Stills, and David Crosby, that they're Americans. So it's a sort of a mixture. A time when I just felt it was desperate. I was glad I got out of there. My father got close to the cyclist, and actually I thought that these cyclists go down the same route. It was just prevalent at the time, or maybe it was just the age I was at the time. So yeah, that's why I like about it. But, it's just a very meaningful song to me.
It's still a problem now. I think, I think especially when you go,
especially
into the cities, it's. But I think it's the same across the UK, isn't it? So, and many other countries.
It's trying to escape desperation. But anyway, so I just thought I should put in something that was meaningful in not such a bright way to balance it up.
Well, do you know when we talk about on the kind of flip side of things,
so yeah, that was what that was about.
Yeah, well, talk about making decisions and kind of, I guess living by the decisions, and you've had to do that a lot of time as well. Live to, face the consequences of the decisions that you made. But this word that comes up over and over again when I speak to ex sort of forces friends is resilient, and it's essential, isn't it? Certainly in the military. But what would you say is the most valuable lesson that you have learnt from the RAF that you still apply to challenges in civilian life?
I think resilience. I think you have to swing with the blows, and you can do that in the military. The military teaches you to take whatever comes next and make the best of it. And I think that's what I'm looking forward into City Street, and it's going to be in good stead. So no matter what happens, it doesn't matter because they say whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and it's true. And so that's that. So I think resilience, the ability to take a situation and make it better. And I think everybody's RAF career or military career is different. Some people just ended up doing one SOC and that was it, and that's all they did. But others were fortunate enough to go and do different things. And I was lucky enough that I wasn't always in the mainstream. I did electronic warfare, bomb plot. In the Gulf War, I was taken away from Buchan at the time, and we did this other thing with the sled busting and stuff. A lot of work with the special forces as well, which was interesting. In fact, I got asked to go and try out for the SAS, and I declined. It's probably just as well because I don't like failure. There was all sorts of things happened in a period of time, and still to this day, every now and again, like my neighbour in Saudi Arabia was ex-SAS, and we knew some people. I didn't know him while he was in, but we knew the same people and stuff like that. And we used to have a laugh with a military humour that only we would understand. You had to be on that sort of wavelength. But civilians wouldn't have understood it, and wouldn't have understood him for sure. So he was quite a scary dude sometimes.
I'm going to ask you about that because there is what do you think? What's the biggest thing? Because there's quite a lot, isn't there? That the civilians don't kind of fully grasp or understand about that military sense of humour. But what would you say is the biggest thing that you've noticed in your time since you've left, where you've gone to crack a joke that would ordinarily go down and have everybody rolling about laughing or
breaking up, mate. I can't hear you. Could you say it again?
The differences between the civilian and the military sense of humour or culture, even. There's a lot that civilians don't understand about the military. But since you've left, what would you say is the biggest thing that the civilians can't really grasp about the military culture?
Yeah, actually, so my wife's a nurse, and they have the humour of the military, but it's a black humour. So that works well, actually. But a lot of people, especially in these days of all this woke business and everything like that, don't get some of the sarcasm that military background. But certainly the health workers do. The nurses and doctors do. They're not the health workers, because you can get social workers that just don't get it. It's just because once again, it's wokeness. That's what it's all about. Is the bluntness of military humour. It's just not shared by civilians. And because most of them have never been in situations where either people are counting on them for life and death situations, whereas nurses and doctors are. So it's I think that's what it's with. You appreciate it or not, because we're all part of the team. Everything you did when you were in the Air Force, if you did your job badly and somebody else did something else, that's a catalogue of that makes an aircraft crash.
Can you hear me okay? Just on the back of what you were saying, in terms of humour, can you think of a time where humour, that military humour, has played a role in diffusing some tension or resolving a bit of conflict in an uncomfortable situation.
I didn't get the question. I got as far as where military humour has been, and didn't get the rest of the question, mate.
Can you think of a time where it's been used to diffuse like a tension or a sort of uncomfortable situation?
I think I get your question. Yeah, quite a few times actually. It's usually in a bar situation where things have started getting out of hand, and perhaps I've had to step in and stop things. Usually a bit of hefty sarcasm goes a long way, and can make people see how silly they're being. I always think it's great to be able to either not get involved in a fight or fight, or to be able to walk away from the fight. You've lost the fight when you start fighting. That's what I always think.
Yeah.
But it's always useful if you're a little bit bigger than the guy you're fighting. So I've always found that too. So there you go. So yeah, military, and you know what? There's enough ex-military people around that they'll recognise it. Even the Canadians. The Canadians military. My next door neighbour said it's a disaster when we get together because we just go out there. I don't know to borrow a tool or something. It takes me 4 or 5 hours to borrow a tool. We get talking and we don't stop, and it's just talking about different things, and the humour comes out. So it crosses nations. Military humour is military humour, no matter which military humour. Apart from ISIS. But that's military humour.
Yeah. Okay, next song. And a little bit cheerier one this time. It's Amari Banks in Summertime.
Oh, yeah. So Amari Banks, for those who don't know, is was a Test cricketer for the West Indies, and his father is Banksy, not Banksy, the guy that does the murals on the wall, but Banksy, the reggae star, and a little island called Anguilla in the Caribbean, and it's a really small island. And when you go there, everybody knows everybody because it's such a small island, and the children are so respectful, and there's no racism because everybody's black. So why would there be, right? And they were never ever slaves either. When they got there to Anguilla way back, there was the Arawak Indians and them, and because it was considered not able to farm, they were given the choice to either stay there or go on to enslaved somewhere where they could farm. So they elected to stay there and try and survive. So the same sort of name carries on. So Gums is a big name, and Banks is a big name, and they're all interrelated, know each other, and everything. It's a fantastic little island. And when I say little, it's like 3 miles wide and 6 miles long. It's really tiny. But it's like heaven on earth. It's like paradise, and it's just so laid back. It's just, and the song "Summertime" typifies the island so much. It's unbelievable. And so Omari's father, Banksy. Now Banksy has fathered many sons, probably like 30 or 40 sons all around the island. And he's got dreadlocks, and he's got splits. The biggest spliffs I've ever seen, and he sits in. So he's got this thing on the beach, this bar on the beach, and he just sits in this sort of almost like a little enclave within the bar, which is so heavily with marijuana. You hide before you don't even need a drink. You just high walking in there. I say I never smoked the stuff, but I bloody well inhaled it, not for free choice. And it's really just a really chilled place.
You can give me the bar details later.
Oh, right, okay. But if you ever get a chance, if you're going to the Caribbean, it's just so there's St. Martin, which a lot of the cruise lines stop off at. If you get on there's another little ferry that goes across to this fantastic island, and the song just typifies that everybody's happy and smiling, and they're happy with their lot. They're fairly poor by our standards, but it's just paradise. Apart from the fact there's a lot of Americans go there on holiday, but they're all wealthy Americans, so they're not
Brings them
of
up.
course. So nice place to visit. Having said that, we normally take holidays in Turks and Caicos because it's a little bit more cosmopolitan and there's more going on there. So if you want a laid back holiday, Anguilla is the place to go, and nobody's ever heard of it. It's fantastic. So that's my sort of my place to unwind and relax. If I needed to go and just chill somewhere, I'll probably go there. If ever I commit a crime, you'll find me there. That's where I'll go by either way.
So, whilst since leaving, when like pursuing other interests, just like you're talking about travel there, interests and hobbies, is there anything that you've that's unexpectedly become like a real passion of yours that you've discovered?
Probably my love of whiskey has. When I say my love of whiskey, I should qualify that. When I have a glass of whiskey, I just have a glass of whiskey. That's it. I don't, and I savor it. And I'll put on some of my favorite music, and it'll be something like I don't know, Terre de Lune by Debussy or something like that. And I'll just sit there and have I don't have a whiskey that's under 18 years old, with the exception of Lagavulin, which is 16 years old. But and that's my sorry,
expensive tastes. Nothing.
Well,
nothing.
Your own
Lagavulin.
Yeah, well, that's the cheapest one I have. My favourite one is King Alexander, which is a beautiful whiskey. I've got Glenfarclas 35, 25, 20-year-olds. I've got Macallan's. I've got, I don't know, probably at any one time I'll have somewhere between 6 and a dozen good whiskies open to savour. But so if I'm for a supping whiskey, I'll for one to have, I'll probably go with Irish whiskey, because I find Blackbush quite, it's to my taste. I like a sherry cask or port cask conditioned whiskey. I don't like oak conditioned, but which is strange because I quite like Lagavulin, and that's really smoky and they're very peaty. So it's just like different tastes. There's no such thing as a bad whiskey. It's just people have different tastes. So Sinclair versus Boris One whiskey. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't tell you the size of the glass, Gary.
Yeah, it's like Billy Connolly's line when he said that he was going out for a pint. He said his wife has always thought that a pint was.
So my appreciation for whiskey has been honed in only because when I was in the RAF, I couldn't really afford to drink good whiskey, and it's not cheap, is it?
No.
No. So when I left Cyprus to come to Canada, they were going to charge me 150% of the value of the whiskey to bring it into Canada. So I just gave my whiskey collection to a client of mine who loved whiskey. And whenever I used to go and see him, I used to take a bottle of whiskey, and we would share a bottle of whiskey between us. And I would drive home because it's in Cyprus, right? Nobody cares about driving there. Strangely enough, everybody drinks and drives in Cyprus, and there are no more deaths per capita in Cyprus through drink driving than there are anywhere else.
Well, my dad told me about that when him and my mum went to Cyprus, and they'd got to know a local like restaurant owner, and after having been invited round for dinner, They thought nothing of just saying, "Come on, I'll take you home." And they would be like, "You've been drinking all night." "Nah, it's okay. It's a cycle."
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. The funny thing is, like you'll go on the motorway there, and there'll be a coach swerving backwards and forwards because they've been to a party or something. The coach driver's gone and got drunk as well, and the whole coach will be swerving, and you have to pick your time to get round the coach, because the coach driver's drunk. Or you'll see the coach driver at the gas station, petrol station, and he'll be filling up, and he'll have a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and filling up with petrol, or diesel or whatever. Mind you, diesel's not a problem.
Yeah.
So Matt got a diesel, it didn't like. So. But it's just a strange place, cyclists. Very, very racist. But
Really?
Yeah, they are. They don't even like Cypriots who left and came back again. They don't realise they are. And when I was leaving there, my accountant said to me, "Paul, why are you leaving?" I said, "I'm fed up with the racism." She said, "Racism? What racism?" I said, "You Greeks, you're all fucking racist, mate." He said, "We're not racist." I said, "No, you are. You just don't realise you are." He said, "Why? Give me an example of racism." I said, "When you worked in London, Philippos, how many people in your accountancy company were there that weren't British?" He said, "Oh, it was a really good company." So he said there was about 400 accountants there. I said, "Then how many weren't British?" He said, "Probably about half of them." I said, "How many people do you have working for you?" He said, "15." I said, "How many are not British?" "God, I'm racist." I said, "How many of your MPs are not from Cyprus?" He said, "They're all from Cyprus." I said, "But you've got like 20,000 Brits living here. They're all from Cyprus. Have you ever noticed you don't have any black people here?" He said, "Yes, why is that?" I said, "Because you're fucking racist." He said, "My God, he never realized." So, and when this Brexit thing came up, I like the idea of Brexit, right? I don't know if it's one after the other. But my point is this: I didn't want to be a member of a club that was so racist. There are no black people in Poland. How many black MPs are there in the whole of Europe? Italy has one. Spain has one. It's almost like they're the token bloody black person. It's ridiculous. France has a few because they have big migration. Belgium don't have any. They've got a huge black population. It really is racist. And so the idea that they'll only deal with each other and won't deal with... so if an African country wants to trade with them, they put huge tariffs on it. I like the idea that we can deal with African countries and we don't have to put tariffs on it. I like the idea that we can deal with any country and we don't have to put tariffs on the goods. That's what I prefer. Now, I know in Scotland, you guys, you would prefer to be part of Europe, but I cannot understand for the life of me why you want independence from Britain to be joined to Europe. They're going to be making the rules instead of well, we don't make the rules, I mean, well, except for when you get silly and you want to have like rapists declaring their women and going to a female jail and things like that. I know it's a bit silly, but I think they could agree with me there. But don't get me on politics because I am pretty good at it. So the Premier of Nova Scotia.
Just let you go.
Yeah, I should.
Should we do your? Should we do your last song? Should we do your last song so we don't get into trouble?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I was dancing to this earlier on, and I've forgotten how much I love this song. Your last song is "Build Me Up, Buttercup" by the Foundation.
Oh yeah, Clem Curtis and the Foundations. So I was at High Wycombe on the entertainment going to the corporate club, and we had a budget for the I think it was the summer ball, and we've done everything else, and I was down to £2,000. This is going back a bit, mind you, for the group, and we wanted a good band, but we left it a bit late, and there was this thing there, and it said Clem Curtis and the Foundations. I thought, Clem Curtis is the lead singer in the Foundations. Why is it Clem Curtis in the Foundations? So it was Clem Curtis, and there was one other original Foundation. The others were like second members. But they only wanted £2,000. Anyway, everybody's saying, "Who's this Clem Curtis and the Foundations?" I said, "The Foundations." I said, "Never heard of them." I said, the Foundations, Build Me Up Buttercup. Never heard of it. Because all the couples there were a lot younger than me, because they never heard of it. Anyway, so everybody was criticising me for spending £2,000 on this band that nobody had ever heard of, and it was a really old band. So the summer ball goes, a DJ had been on, and he introduces the band, and Clem Curtis comes out, and they started straight off with Build Me Up Buttercup Baby, and the place rocked. The whole place rocked. It was fantastic. It's a great, as you said, you were dancing to it. It's a great song to dance to, and it was fantastic. And then everybody recognised it. And I was the big swinging dick then, and everybody thought it was brilliant because it's fantastic group. How we got the Foundations for £2,000, I don't know, but it was fantastic. So that was why I threw that in there as a sort of a throwaway. As one of my claims to fame that we brought the Foundations to Heineken, and that was it. My life has been dotted around with pop groups because the Bay City Rollers, you won't remember them, or you probably might do, but the Bay City Rollers, they were mostly from Dundee, and they had booked in to play at the Eagle Club at Lucas, and then they became famous in between that happening and the booking, so they still had to honour their bookings. So they had a #1 hit and everything. They're a big famous band, and they came to the Eagle Club, and we used to have lock-ins at night. Now, I was only like 15 years old, okay, but I was sort of in with the right people to get lock-ins at night. And they had these. The Nappy used to bring down these cages with they were like square links with the roller cage basically. And one of the guys, whose name I don't know because he was just referred to as Dog, always used to have an umbrella. And nobody understood why they walked around with an umbrella every time they went to the discos. But it was so they used to put a pipe pot there to catch all the drips. So he would have an umbrella, and in the umbrella he had a tube. He used to bring the tube out, put it into the pipe pot, and switch the tap on. And they hadn't switched the taps off, and we'd get a free beer after Nappy stuff and all left. And we used to sit there drinking all night. So we would, when the Bay City Rollers came there, they had a drink with us afterwards. And to cut a long story short, they asked me to be their roadie, or one of their roadies, because they just got famous and they didn't have this sort of infrastructure. So I said, I'd have to ask my father. He said, why? And I said, well, because I'm only 15. He was sort of shocked, because I was a sort of big lad for 15. Right, So they said, okay, no, we're still game. And my sister was kissing herself laughing. She's 4 years older than me. So I asked my father, and he told me to go and blow my head, basically. And that never happened. But so there was that. And then my sister was, when she went down to London, she was going out with a guy called Mick Tucker. And Mick Tucker was the drummer of the Suite. And they did Ballroom Blitz and Coco and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, they came up to the ballroom at Kirkcaldy. And so we went back to their hotel with them and had a few drinks. So Brian Connolly, not the comedian, the singer, and Andy Scott, and Mick Tucker, and Steve. I can't remember Steve's. Anyway, so that I was only like 16 then, so I was still quite young, and so and just all the way through, I just keep meeting up with pop groups somehow and getting involved. But I don't know. And since there have been others, I'm not going to go you with all of it. But it's just strange. And until recently, I couldn't play an instrument or anything. I say until recently, because I'm getting old now. Right, I'm 67 now, right? So I'm starting to knock on a little bit. So yeah, it's just the hair is deceiving, right? It's all mine. So in fact, I saw a picture of Andy and Paddy. I've got beards. And I thought, well, if we're having a competition to see who looks the oldest, I'm going to enter it. But they might be giving me a run for my money. But anyway,
I think Gary had been. I think Gary was using a Facetune app.
Oh right, okay, that might be. Yeah, that would figure actually. It did look a bit shocking. So anyway, so because I was thinking things that. Remembering different words, and that gets a little bit tougher as you get older. I thought I'd do something different to try and make my mind a bit sharper. So I thought, no, I'll learn music. I better learn an instrument then. So I went into piano lessons. So I learned to play the piano. So now I can play the piano. Not very well, but I can play it anyway. So I can do things like that. I'm okay because I can read music. I'm okay if I read the music and then I can make myself play the tune after a little bit of fighting around. But there are some people that can just look at the music and play it brilliantly straight away. I'm nowhere near as good as that. And there are some people that can play it brilliantly and can't read music. I have no idea how to do that. So that's just something. Yeah.
So there's in addition to the music connection, there's two other things that you've mentioned tonight that we have in common. In addition to the fact that we've both been charged during our time a shitload of times. The two things that you mentioned, and I don't know which ones you may or may not know. I too was an entertainment threat at Horsham St Faith's Families Club.
All right.
And I too got into bother when I did a gentleman's evening and brought along a load of strippers.
I did the same thing. Oh, long story, yeah.
So, and the other thing, well, you will remember this because you were at Buchan when this happened, was just like you, I too lost my security clearance for 4 months. But we don't need to go into that. So
I remember that.
Yeah, I know.
I know you revere Jock Thompson, and that's fine. That's okay. But he was some part of the reason why you were having problems. So, I know you think he pulled you up by your bootstraps, but I never know. So going back to Akrotiri, my father was stationed at Akrotiri, so we went to Cyprus. And one of the SACs there on the committee was a Bill Thompson, right? Jock Thompson. He was an SAC at the time. And scaly brats, I've got long hair down here with blonde hair and everything, and we used to take the piss out of it. He didn't like the fact that dependents were allowed to use the nappy, and he used to try and kick us out. And he would try and kick us out at night. So we used to tease him, call him Tantalizing Tom, and we used to take the piss out of him and everything. And he hated it. Now I wonder whether he actually knew that was me years later, and he thought. Get his own back. I don't know. Because what goes around comes around. And if that's the case, I haven't got a problem with it because perhaps I deserved it. But I just found him to be a complete arse. I really did. Yeah, there's been some great warrant officers and some great man managers in our trade. But I didn't find him to be one of them. That's just my own.
Your personal opinion.
Yeah, and that's it.
And you're entitled to it.
Yeah, and just as people, it's like we get holy rollers around here, Mormons that come around with the Bibles and everything, and that's up to them. And we got one the other day, and he says, "So, are you a Christian?" I said, "No, I'm a humanist." He said, "Oh, I never heard of a humanist." I said, "Oh, well, actually, humanists are probably close to you guys, except for we don't believe in God at all. But we do believe in the inalienable right of everybody to worship whichever God they want to, provided it does no harm to others. And as you guys do no harm to others, and it's other people's opinion that you do harm to yourselves, then fair play to you. And as long as religion and government are not connected, we're happy." And so a lot of people, so that's the way I approach everything. Everybody's entitled to think. It's a bit like this. We were talking about genders earlier. Look, if somebody wants to identify as if you said to me you want to identify as a woman, you're entitled to. Now, you can identify as a woman if you want to, but I know you're a bloke. Just because you identify as a woman, I'll accept that you identify as a woman, but you have to accept that I know that you're a bloke, and you can't change that in me, because that's my opinion, because I know you were born a bloke. You can be born a bloke and identify as a woman, that's fine, as long as you don't take any part in any sport, because then you're harming others. It's just the way I think, basically.
Yeah. I have got I've got one more question for you, and just on what you were saying, actually, I'm curious. I'm kind of trying to think about bringing both worlds together, like So if you think about the experience that you have had in life in general, like as a manager, as a human being, as somebody creative, as somebody with a mind of their own. Here's one for you, random. It's putting you on the spot, but it's actually just a bit of fun. So if you could recruit for the RAF, okay, if you could recruit any fictional character to join the RAF, who would it be? And more importantly, what role do you think they would play?
Fictional character. I will just say, I'd like to say before we end it, goes off constantly, but how extraordinary our watch and our squadron was at Buckham at the time that we were there. It wasn't just extraordinary then. It's been proven to be extraordinary now because all the people who are there have all turned out to be extraordinary people. They've all turned out to be incredibly good people. And they were back then. We just didn't recognise it then because you guys were all like 18, 19. And it was, you hadn't had time to prove yourselves. But it was just obvious. It was just so obvious that I've worked with loads of watches. The only other watch I've worked with that was nearly as good as the watch that we were on then was the other watch I worked with at Buckham back in the early 70s. But nowhere near as good as the watch that we had back then and the squadron we had back then. And the characters, they're all sterling people. I can't think of one person that I would think, oh, what a tosser, or what a waste of space, or he's taking up good breathing space. You know, I mean, everybody was, and the crew room at night was so entertaining. It was fantastic, especially fucking Top Gun. Oh my god, it was extraordinary. And I felt I just felt I wish on some level that I hadn't got posted when I did, because I thought that I know I came off squadron and went into training, but I just thought there was more to do there, and it could have been better. And some of those people that left earlier might have stayed and done well for the Air Force. They've gone on and done well anyway for what they've done. But if they stayed, I guess really, although I was always a bit of an anarchist, I was also really a Air Force through and through as well at the same time as that possible. So I was a contradiction in terms of it. I really got to so we really so yes.
This is maybe a great way to sign off. This has been a lot of fun tonight. For anybody that listens to this later, Gary's just popped a comment in there replying to something that Paul said earlier. He said, I remember Jock Thompson saying that you were a little shit as a kid. So that's confirmed, Paul.
That doesn't surprise me. And he's right. And so they had this bar called where the pigs bar, so every camp has pigs bar. Well, the rockets and that used to drink. And they used to do this thing where they used to make the nappy staff do shit toasties and all sorts of disgusting things. And when somebody was getting married, they would have all these drinks and they would push it round. And if people were sick, they had to sit back into the glass and you had to drink it. This was going back in the really bad old days. And just because I was a scaly brat, didn't let me escape. And oh Jesus, some of the things I did worse things before I joined the RAF than after. I remember the time when, remember Murdo Mackay?
Yeah.
The rocket. They were chewing Mars bars and swapping them and making some of our young lads swap them. And I had to go down and sort that out. I was already corporate at the time. I was stiff word. That was out of order. But the one of the very quickly before I sign off, one of the really good funny memories was Jez Lawton's party. Do you remember?
I can't believe that we've not spoken about this already.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. And I was already cross. People were going on my brick and shouting screaming, and there was Julie Whiteley. I'm not going to go into it. What happened at that party should stay at that party. But the ramifications afterwards were quite.
Things changed after that quite significantly, didn't they?
Yeah, after the Inquisition, yeah.
Yeah, I remember, but I remember it was not too long after that Karen and I were like moving out, and the hoops that we had to jump through to move out, and because it was me as well, it was. Yeah, but there's one other thing that I've got to ask you about, and because I totally forgot about this earlier on. So I was asked to ask you about the babysitting incident.
Oh, is this with Jez?
It might be. It was Bladesy that asked when he saw we were speaking tonight. He said, "Ask him about the babysitting incident."
I only know that. I mean, Jez and Joe, Joe Crow. Do you remember Joe Crow?
Yeah.
But funny enough, Joe Crow became worked for me as a barmaid when I had my pub, and so did her father. And I'm still in touch with that. Anyway, the only instance was I can't remember. I think one of my sons, like my eldest son, asked him for some money or something to be quiet about what they, I can't remember. I don't remember a particular incident there. The only other incident I remember was and it was nothing to do with me, was we had this guy in our trade, I can't remember his name now, and he was a bit strange, and with another guy called Mark and his wife, they got this guy to babysit for them, and this is a horse and St. Faith, and when they came back early, or the party was rubbish or something, or she had a headache, so they came back early. Barney was his name, the guy they got to babysit. And they got in, and Barney was sitting there wearing his wife's clothes. It was a bit of a shocker. What do? You come home, your babysitter's wearing your missus' clothes.
Well, like her underwear.
Everything.
Everything.
The whole works. Everything. Pants, tights, bras, tops, the whole lot. Completely dressed in her things. And she was a tall girl, and she had, so. But yeah, I can't remember his name, Mark something. But that's the only other incident I can think of with babysitter.
Well, each to their own, I say. You know what? No judgment here. Paul, I've had a fantastic time. And you know what? We've not let the technology get to us. We can overcome. It's been fantastic. Great banter. Sorry?
So it's just anyway. So anyway, it's been a pleasure, and it's been great. And give my regards to all the old crew. And if you're listening later on, wish you all well, mate. Wish you all well. All right, thanks a lot, bud.
And likewise, it's been great. Speak soon.
Cheers.